Okay, thank you for joining us for today's webinar, KSR Evidence Systematic Reviews to Support Guidelines. My name is Willemijn Linden. I am the database manager for KSR Evidence, and I will also be your moderator and host today. I joined Kleinen Systematic Reviews, or KSR, in January 2018, and I manage the database day to day. I am also the main point of contact for KSR Evidence. So here is the outline for today's session. After going over some housekeeping rules, I will introduce our speakers for today, Dr. Robert Wolf and Senior Information Specialist Lisa Sturck. I will then give a brief overview of the typical guideline development process, as well as some background information about KSR Evidence. After this, Lisa will demonstrate an advanced search and show how you can find relevant evidence for your guideline on KSR Evidence. Robert will then walk you through an appraisal and explain the ROBIS tool we use, as well as give more details about our prioritization process. The webinar will then end with a Q&A session where Robert and Lisa will answer as many questions as time allows. So before I introduce our speakers and talk a little bit more about how KSR Evidence can support guidelines, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. So today's webinar is being recorded. We will share a link with you after the event is complete and put it up on our website as well. We welcome you to revisit this content at any time and also to share it with your colleagues if you think that they may find it helpful. So we do have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but we welcome your comments and questions throughout the session today. And Robert, Lisa, and myself from the KSR Evidence team are always happy to help you with any query you might have. So if you think of something after today's webinar has ended, I know that that always happens to me, please do get in touch with us. So the expected duration of this webinar is around 45 minutes for the session itself, with a further 10 to 15 minutes for any questions. So today's speakers are Dr. Robert Wolf and Senior Information Specialist Lisa Sturck. Robert is the Managing Director of KSR, and since joining KSR in 2008, he worked on a variety of projects for reimbursement agencies in several countries, as well as pharmaceutical companies and scientific societies, which included guideline groups. Robert was a member of the development group for the ROBIS tool and also part of the steering group for the development of ProBest. So he will tell you how we use ROBIS to critically appraise systematic reviews later this session. Then Lisa Sturck, she is one of our senior information specialists, and she is experienced in designing and running literature searches. She has also been involved since the very beginning with the development of KSR Evidence. Now, for the purpose of this session, we will be using a hypothetical guideline on the topic of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I will not go over the different stages of a guideline in detail. However, broadly speaking, the following stages are usually adhered to. I have also included references here on this slide if you want to find out more detailed information about the guideline process. So first, the guideline topic is identified and a committee and stakeholders are established. Then the scoping stage commences. And in this stage, the rationale for the guideline is set out and the initial draft is sent to stakeholders for feedback. Once the final scope has been published, we then enter the development stage. So during this stage, the review questions are finalized, literature searches are performed, evidence reviews are undertaken, and the draft recommendations are produced. It then moves to the consultation and revision stages, where both the stakeholders and the committee review and comment on the draft guideline. There is then a period of quality assurance and sign-off, before the guideline is published. Now, the process I have outlined here is based on NICE, but of course there are other guideline providers and details of the process might vary between them. So for today's session, we are going to focus on the development stage because KSR Evidence can be really, really useful during this stage of the process. KSR Evidence provides an advanced search interface to search more than 284,000 systematic reviews. And KSR Evidence has also published more than 31,000 critical appraisals. Every time I say those numbers, I just smile because they're so high. It's so much. So I'm now going to give a brief overview of some of the main functions and a little bit more background information about how KSR Evidence was developed. So KSR Evidence is a database of systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and health technology assessment reports published worldwide in healthcare since 2015. It does date back to 2010 for some topics, for example, topics related to pain. For many systematic reviews, KSR Evidence provides a critical appraisal and a short, accessible bottom line. The bottom line provides a brief summary of the key clinically relevant implications of the results reported in the review and includes information about the reliability of these results. So KSR Evidence was developed by Kleinen Systematic Reviews Limited, or KSR, an independent research company that produces and disseminates systematic reviews, cost-effectiveness analyses, and health technology assessments of research evidence in healthcare. KSR Evidence now forms a separate company. Now, development started when the database of abstracts of reviews of effects, I'm just going to call them by their more commonly known name, DARE. There was a database funded by NIHR and managed by the Center for Reviews and Dissemination, or CRD, from 1994 to 2014. But DARE lost its funding at the end of 2014. And Jos Kleinen, who is a founding director of KSR Evidence, and also a former director of CRD, he thought that, well, even though DARE has now lost its funding, a database of systematic reviews is still relevant and it's still needed in the world. It should exist. So as a result, KSR Evidence was developed with the aim of expanding the original remit of DARE to include all healthcare-related systematic reviews and not just interventions, which is what DARE did. They only included interventions. So KSR Evidence is available on a subscription basis with costs dependent on the size and the type of the organization. If you want to know more about our subscription models, then please do contact us. As participants in this webinar, you will all receive a free access code after the webinar has ended, so you can try out KSR Evidence and see if it suits your needs. The trial will be valid for 1 week, but if you do not have time this week to try it out, then do get in touch because I can set it up for you at a time of your choosing for 1 week. So I just wanted to include this here because you can see that the number of systematic reviews published per year increases. So these numbers are correct as of yesterday afternoon and were taken from ksrevidence.com. So over 41,000 systematic reviews were published in 2022. And the difference between 2022 and 2020 is just about 11,000 systematic reviews. So you can see that the number does taper off a bit in 2023, but it is still very high at over 38,000. I mean, compare that to 2019, for example, at just over 26,000. It's an incredible increase in just 4 years' time. So our aim originally was to critically appraise all systematic reviews, but I hope you will agree with me that there is no way we could critically appraise all systematic reviews because there are simply too many being published every single year. So with so many reviews published per year, we knew we had to use our capacity to critically appraise efficiently. We have capacity to do about 3,000 appraisal a year. So we tweaked the process a little bit. So rather than appraising all systematic reviews, we implemented a prioritization process where a reviewer screens and checks all newly added systematic reviews, and he marks them as either priority or not a priority. The priority records then go on to be critically appraised, which allows KSR Evidence to focus on those systematic reviews that are most likely to be of interest to users. So back to our hypothetical guideline. Let's say that the scope for our guideline on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has been produced, it has been agreed, and we have now entered the development stage. So I'm now going to hand over to Lisa, who will show you the advanced search she put together for our hypothetical guideline, and she will go over some of the search functionality on KSR Evidence. I will remain available in the chat to answer any questions you might have. Lisa, over to you.
Great, thanks, Will. So yeah, as Will said, I'm Lisa Stirk, and I'm one of the information team here at KSR, and I've been involved right since from the beginning with the development of KSR Evidence. Over the years, I've run plenty of literature searches for systematic reviews, HTAs, and guidelines, and I've found that with guidelines and other large topics, a good place to start is often with a search for systematic reviews in the area, and this is where KSR Evidence is really useful. Previously, I would have had to search direct on large biomedical databases like Medline and Embase, and then limit my search using systematic reviews filter. So I didn't miss anything. My filter would have to be quite sensitive. So I'd end up with lots of records to search through, many of which would be duplicates, and some of which wouldn't be systematic reviews anyway. So what's great about KSR Evidence is that we've already done a lot of the hard work for you. We've developed over time complex, sensitive search strategies that aim to find everything that could potentially be a systematic review. And we then screen those results to identify only those which really are systematic reviews, or at least which claim to be, at any rate. And we search across lots of different resources as well. So we cover Embase, Medline, Cochrane Library, CINAHL, PsycInfo, Lilacs, as well as the INATA database and many HTA organisation websites for health technology assessments. And every record we find from these searches is manually screened for inclusion. So you know when you're searching KSR Evidence, you're searching just for systematic reviews, and obviously you're saving yourself a lot of time in the long run. So what I'm going to do now is move over to KSR Evidence and just for a quick demonstration, show you some of the search functionality that we have on KSR Evidence. So if I can just share my screen with you. There we go. There, hope that's okay.
Yep, that works, Lisa.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I will. Okay, I was hoping to turn my camera off. There we go, turn my camera off. So what we've got here is KSR Evidence. And as you can see, I've put together a search for you to look through based on, as Will said earlier, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So of course, this guideline isn't real. So I mean, for a proper searcher, it would be a lot more comprehensive for any actual guideline I was searching for. But it does give you some idea of the search interface for KSR Evidence and a rough idea of the numbers that it's retrieved for this particular topic. So I ran the search before the start of the session because it would be more than painful watching me type it all in. And here are some of the systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and HTAs that we found with this brief search for NAFLD, or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So under the search strategy, you can see a list of the records found. Now I've sorted by risk of bias, so the ones that have a full appraisal will be listed at the top, along with an indication of their risk of bias. So the green ticks for good quality ones. Moving down. Oh, they must be on the next screen, never mind. But they move down through the various different levels of appraisal. And Robert's going to talk to you about the risk of bias appraisal in more detail later. So in this advanced search example, you can see some of the search functionality that we have in KSR Evidence, and you can use this to make your search as sensitive or as specific as you need it to be. And it's worth mentioning here that information specialists were actually involved right from the beginning in developing this interface, which I think always makes a big difference and hopefully improves its usability for you. So you can see in KSR Evidence, as usual, we have the Boolean operators and, or, and not, and you can use those either within a search line or you can use them between search lines just by clicking on the bottom options there. We do have the Boolean operator not, but as an information specialist, I tend to advise you only use that with caution. Unfortunately, it's really easy to lose potentially relevant records by accident if you don't use that with due care and attention. But and or, they're available within lines and between lines as well. And we can use brackets as well. So we can use brackets within our searches to group together similar concepts and terms. So here in this line, I've grouped the different ways of writing non-alcoholic, so with a space and without. And just as an aside, I don't need to search with a hyphen here as it doesn't distinguish between a hyphen and a space. So non-alcohol with a space will pick up non-alcohol with a hyphen as well as a space. We can use truncation using this asterisk symbol here. So non-alcohol with an asterisk picks up that word stem, so it'll find non-alcohol or non-alcoholic and so on. So that's, I'm sure that's a function you've come across before. And we can use inverted commas for phrase searching as well. So I've searched for fatty liver, which will only then be picked up as an exact phrase. One of the advanced search functions that we have here in KSR Evidence is the use of this adjacency operator here, which can be really useful to help focus your search. So you can use adj with a number, or you can use near with a number. Essentially, it finds records which have a certain number of words between them. So non-alcoholic within 2 words of fatty liver disease, for example. And we've provided both adj and near as an option to make it easy for you to copy and paste your search in from other database interfaces like Ovid or the Cochrane Library. Ovid uses adj, for example, the Cochrane Library uses near, and that means that you can, like I say, copy your search direct from one interface to another. It just makes life that little bit easier for everybody. So the next thing I wanted to mention was that you can limit your search to specific fields. So in this first one here, I've searched by title and abstract, but there are other options as well. You can search all text, just the title, bottom line, authors if you wanted to, or abstract, or the journal title, or if you have the KSR appraisal number, you can search on that as well. So in this line, quite randomly, I've searched for title and abstract, and in this one, I've searched for all text. It's worth mentioning at this point you can modify your KSR Evidence search at any point, any part of it you can change. So if I wanted, for example, to change this to title and abstract, I could just click on the drop down. You'll see the number of hits here will change as I click on title and abstract. And sorry, I'm sharing my internet with 2 teenagers at the moment, so I'm afraid it's a little bit slow at the moment. But eventually it'll search for that in the title or abstract field, and it'll prompt me to refresh other search lines. So I'll click here, and if you notice, it will change the search number at the bottom because it's now searching on different fields. So that's a really helpful function because quite often you'll see that something will change halfway through, or you'll notice a mistake. So it's really easy just to correct a simple mistake at the end. So if you're unsure about any of these, let's face it, every database you use seems to have its own search syntax. Just click on this little I button here, and that'll show you the various different sort of syntax search features that you're able to use within KSR Evidence. Just close that for now. So the next feature I wanted to highlight here is all about saving your search. Now, I've already saved a search on diabetes before this session, and what I want to do now is combine it with this search to find records on diabetes in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And that can be really useful. And I'll get this started because it's bound to take ages to load. There we go. So I click on diabetes, and it will pop it in at the bottom there. So as I say, this can be really helpful if you've got, say, a population for your guideline that you're using constantly. If you just want to tack it onto the end of an existing search, you don't have to type it all in again, and that can be really useful. So I can now combine these lines. So that one on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and this one on diabetes. And I can combine them by clicking on the AND operator at the bottom there. And as you'll see, that's found me 402 records. So if I want to limit this search down even further, there's several ways of doing that. So I've got these filter options down the left-hand side here, where I can limit by ROBIS assessment, by publication date, by author, or by journal. And that will limit the whole search for you. Alternatively, I can use, you see this little cog icon along here. If I click on that, it shows you how to limit that specific line of search. So here I can limit by ROBIS assessment, by date published, or the date at which the record was added to KSR Evidence. So again, that's a useful feature if you just want to keep your eye on kind of the latest developments in your field. So what I'm going to do now is just limit by ROBIS assessment. So I just want, of those 402, I just want to see the records that have got a full ROBIS assessment attached to them. All the others come up as unassessed, which is the little question mark box at the bottom. So there we go. And now I've found 17 records matching my search criteria of NAFLD and diabetes, which have a ROBIS risk of bias assessment. If I want to see the full strategy, I mean, obviously you can see it up at the top here, but if you want to see just a simple listing of it, you click on Show Strategy, and it gives you a nice little drop down of all your results. Again, with the limits I applied down the bottom here. Just to scroll back up to the top of this window, you see you've got another couple of search options or functionality options. So you can save your search. For example, if you think I'm going to be running that search again, I really don't have to type it all in again, let's save it. You click on the little save icon. It prompts you to name the search, so something that's meaningful to you. And it also asks if you want to receive email notification of new and changes to systematic reviews which match your search. I'll just cancel that for now. Once you've done that, incidentally, it will also appear, if you click on the little heart option, it'll appear as one of your saved searches under there. Another thing you can do from this screen is copy a search strategy. So if you copy it, it will give you a nice, very simple text formatted copy of your search strategy. And then that's then really easy to copy and paste into your guidelines method section, which is obviously something I'd always recommend so that people can see the search you've conducted and replicate it if necessary. So that's a simple copy and then just paste it into your Word document or whatever. Close that again now. So the final thing, hopefully you've been through all your search, you've limited it down, hopefully you found some records of interest. So the next thing you'll, I imagine, want to do is export them. So you can click on them to see the full record. That's the full record there. And again, Robert will go through that in a moment. But if you want to select records for export, you can either select all or just select the ones that you're interested in and then click on the export button. Again, it asks you if you want all search records or just your selected ones. And there's two different options here for export. So you can export in RIS format, which is a text-based format which will import into EndNote or other reference management software, or you can export in CSV, which should import into Excel. And I'll just cancel that for now. So just a quick run through of some of the features available to you on KSR Evidence, and that's it from me now. I hope you found this useful. As Will said, I'm happy to take any questions at the end in the Q&A session. So thank you for listening, and I'll pass over to Robert now to talk about critical appraisals on KSR Evidence. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Lisa, and for summarizing the search functionality, and thank you, Will, for giving the introduction. I'm trying to share my screen, so hopefully that works.
Yeah,
Will,
that works.
thank you very much. So welcome from me as well. I'm quite excited to have quite a few different countries represented, and obviously not only different countries, but different organizations. So welcome to all of you. So Lisa just talked about the search functionality. I want to pick up on that and basically show you what you find if you click on these records. What are we describing as critical appraisals, and why could it be useful for you as a guideline developer? Maybe a good time to remind you all that if you have any questions, at the bottom of your screen there's a Q&A button. You can post your questions there, and we are more than happy to answer them at the end of this presentation. Right, so you saw that screen earlier. The number is indeed a little bit intimidating. I remember when the numbers were much lower, and we passed something like 10,000 systematic review published in 1 year, and everyone was stunned by that. And now we are talking about 4 times that, so that is really quite impressive. So 284,000 records in KSR Evidence, and these are records that are mostly after 2015, which makes it a great resource of systematic reviews and evidence syntheses more generally. Around 1/9 of those, 1 in 9, have been appraised, critically appraised, and that means it has a critical appraisal, so a risk of bias assessment, and I show you the other elements that are part of that. And these are, as mentioned before, selected in a prioritization process. And as we established earlier, the numbers are going up each year, it seems. So prioritization. So Will already mentioned there are huge amounts of records added every year. I say here more than 35,000, probably it's more around 40,000 or even above that when we look at 2022. We aim to critically appraise around 300 systematic reviews per month. So that means that 11% of the systematic reviews in KSR Evidence have a critical appraisal. And we try to identify the more relevant ones for that process by prioritizing certain journals. So things that are published in, let's say, the BMJ and the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, Cochrane reviews, that sort of level will automatically be included and critically appraised because they are arguably the top quality and most relevant ones. We, in addition to that, try to identify other systematic reviews that could be relevant. So, for example, recently when COVID was a real issue, we tried to identify those topics that were in the news, that were relevant to people, to bring that out and make that available to subscribers as quickly as we could. And of course, there's the option as a subscriber to request critical appraisals that could be relevant for you, your guideline, let's say. So you saw that screen earlier shown by Lisa. So if we click into one of these systematic reviews, into one of these records, I want to make sure you understand the structure. So it's a bit like a Cochrane review, let's say. Once you understand the structure, it's much easier to find your way around, to find the information that you're looking for. And it is always the same structure in KSR Evidence. So at the bottom, at the top, obviously, you have the title of the systematic review, followed by the list of authors. And please note that you can click on these authors. So if you see an author where you think, yes, that person has published relevant stuff in my area, what else is available? You can simply click on the name and it will do a search for that author. Then you have these details, these citation details, including a link to the full text options if you need that. Then there is on the top right a risk of bias assessment, so the overall statement on how reliable is that evidence. And there are also tools to print it, to provide comments, or indeed to get a citation out of it. I will talk through all these elements in more detail now. but you always have the outline on the right-hand side of the screen, so you can easily navigate each of these entries. So each entry, as you can see, indicated by that red arrow on the right, each of these entries start with a bottom line, which is a short summary of the findings and limitations of that particular systematic review. And talk about that a little bit more here. You see an example there at the bottom of the screen, and the idea is to have the main results and some sort of indication whether or not these findings are reliable on the same screen. So to immediately know how relevant it is for your work. So back to the full entry. Here you have more details of that on that risk of bias assessment. I will come back to that in a moment. This page here, details of the review, is quite often very, very useful because it gives you an idea how much has been included, so how comprehensive the systematic review has been, how many participants were included when the search was done, what sort of review type it is, and what the review authors actually try to achieve. What was the objective of the systematic review? And that is then followed by the ECOS elements, so population, intervention, comparators, outcome and study designs, and that can be really, really helpful to match this systematic review that you identified in your search of KSR evidence, to match that to how relevant it could be to your research question or your guideline, let's say. That is then followed by a write-up of the results, and as you can hear, as you can see here on the screen, that is quite detailed, gives you quite a lot to work with the main results and anything that could be relevant. And that is then followed by the full risk of bias assessment, which is done in these 4 domains, which I show you in a moment. Last but not least, where available, we include the abstract, the original abstract of the systematic review that this record is about. So that is obviously also quite useful. I said to you that this structure is always the same. So this is another example from the same search, the search that we saw earlier that Lisa prepared. So this is a different example from the same search, a negative example, but it follows exactly the same structure, so it should be easy to navigate. So you have the risk of bias assessment at the top with that traffic light system. You have a breakdown of the risk of bias on the side, and of course you can use the outline on the right-hand side to navigate to the various elements that we have seen already. So ROBIS was mentioned a few times. ROBIS is the tool that we use to assess these systematic reviews, which is a tool that has been developed by a fairly distinguished group of researchers. So just to talk about the first 3 there, Penny Whiting is also the main author of QUADRS, QUADRS 2, QUADRS 3, QUADRS C. She has been involved in a lot of these risk of bias tools. Jelena Savovic is involved in the Cochrane risk of bias tools, ROBIS, ROB 2.0 and Robbins I. And Julian Higgins is obviously quite well known in the field as the author of the Cochrane Handbook, or the editor rather. So all of these people know a thing or two about systematic reviews, and they got together to basically design and develop this tool called ROBIS. So what is ROBIS? ROBIS is this tool that is organized in 4 domains. The domain-based structure is similar to tools like ROB 2.0 or Robbins I, QUADRS 2, or PROBAS, so other tools in that area that are widely used. It is organized in these 4 domains, which represent different areas of the systematic reviews, where things could go wrong, and you want to know how robust it is, how methodologically sound the review process has been, and you do that by answering these 21 signaling questions that are in these 4 domains. Then each domain gets a domain rating, and that is then summarized in that column on the right in the risk of bias of the overall review. So back to the negative example, to the second example that we identified a moment ago, you see right away that in the 4 domains, there are 2 domains that have been rated as problematic. One is unclear, i.e. there hasn't been enough information to really rate it, and one domain, domain 1, has been rated as properly as low risk of bias. So you can click on each of these domains, and then you get a breakdown. Obviously, as with all of these risk of bias tools, it is a process that needs a little bit of judgment, but obviously it is very, very transparent to see how the raters got to the decision on this systematic review. So at the top there, you see a box, the support for judgment box, where information is summarized that helps you to answer the signaling questions that are shown below, and the ratings are there. And you can see that there was one signaling question that was rated as properly no, and no or properly no are negative answers, and that led to a high risk of bias for this domain. So the problem was that looking at the funnel plots for that were provided by the authors of that systematic review, there was some indication of potential publication bias, and because that was pretty much across the board, that was rated as a problem. You could see that if it's only affecting one particular subgroup, then it might be noted in the support for judgment comments so that you're aware of it, but the rating might have been probably yes, because for most of the systematic review, it's okay, and that could have led to this domain being rated as low risk of bias. But as I said, the information is there, so it is very, very transparent how the judgment was derived at. So all of these critical appraisals are written by one reviewer and then checked by a second reviewer in an attempt to reduce error and bias, so following the standards that you know from systematic review processes. And I know you have seen this slide before. It is just as a reminder of the structure that I've shown you, and I hope this could be useful, or I believe this could be useful for quite a number of people. So that could be for healthcare professionals. It could be, of course, for guideline developers. That's why we are having this webinar. Or it could be for decision makers or researchers more generally, or for information specialists that support any of these processes, try to identify gaps in the evidence base, try to prepare scoping review to see what's already out there. So there are different angles you can take where KSR evidence might be useful. Just briefly, that's my second to last slide. Just briefly, I mentioned that we only assessed, well, I say only, that's debatable, 1 in 9 of the records that we have included in KSR evidence. So if you come across one entry where you think, okay, this could be really relevant for my review question, and it would be good to have one of these critical appraisals for that, you can request that using that button in the top right corner. And for a nominal fee of 25 British pounds, we would prepare that for you. So that is obviously, I would argue, relatively cheap for the work involved. And the turnaround time to do that is usually just a few days, but obviously it depends on a number of factors. So if that underlying manuscript is or paper is quite hard to find, it might take a little bit longer, but just to give you an idea, usually it's a turnaround in a few days. Right, so that could be useful for you as guideline developers and can save you some resources compared to preparing critical appraisals yourself. Anyway, I'm wrapping up now, and I will turn on my camera, and I wonder if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that explanation of the ROBIS tool, and also thank you very much, Lisa, for showing the advanced search functionality there. We hope that we have explained and shown how KSR Evidence can assist during the guideline development process. We have some questions that have been submitted, but again, as a reminder, if you have anything that you would like to ask us, have not yet submitted, please enter it in the Q&A and we will get through the questions as they come in. So first question is for Lisa. Lisa, how up to date is the database?
It's a really good question. We search Medline and Embase on a weekly basis, and we screen them pretty much within the week. Once they've been screened, they actually get, well, tidied up and edited and sort of neatened up a little bit, and then they get added straight to KSR Evidence. So the Medline and Embase records you will see within a week. There are a number of databases we search on a monthly basis. So that includes CINAHL, the nursing database, PsycInfo, Lilacs, Pedro. What else do we do on a monthly basis? I'm sure there's another one I can't remember. So they get done every month. And then there's a few that we do on a quarterly basis. So the INATA database and RMED, the alternative medicine database. So again, they tend to get screened pretty much within a week or two and added direct to KSR Evidence.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. That's helpful. Robert, question for you. What are some common pitfalls of systematic reviews? Why are there so many low quality appraisals?
Yeah.
And low quality, I think they mean the high risk of bias rating.
Yeah, I guess that is an ongoing debate, to be honest. I think just this last weekend I saw a recording of an interview that the late Douglas Altman gave on that very question, and I was surprised to see that that was 10 years old, and in some respect it aged well because the topics that he highlighted were still very, very current. So I think one problem is that quite often systematic reviews are done without proper consideration of how much work it is, and you need to really put a team together with different expertise to work together as a team, clinical expertise, information specialists, statistical expertise, all of that you need to bring together to do it. So common pitfalls that we see in systematic reviews in the ROBIS assessment, yeah, it can be anything. So quite often, Lisa will probably back me up on that. It's quite common that only one language is searched, which can be okay, but quite often if you try to identify all relevant evidence on one topic, it is likely that there is evidence that has not been published in just English. And then, of course, it could be in all the other areas as well. So quite commonly that the authors cut corners and didn't follow best practice, which is that 2 reviewers should be involved in all these crucial steps of the inclusion screening, of data extraction, of risk of bias assessment. So that are just examples of common pitfalls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Second question also for you. How many fast track appraisals can you do at once?
Well, we haven't come to the limits yet, let's say. So we can do quite a few. I think at the moment, if I remember correctly, we have 50 or 60 that we are currently doing, and should return in a week or two. Well, in the next week, let's say. But we could do more if needed. So in a nutshell, if there is a big guideline where this service could be helpful, that can certainly be discussed, and it can also be discussed how to fit the timeline needs that a subscriber might have.
Yeah, so I will jump in on this answer that you've given. So to give an example, we are currently, as Robert said, working our way through some of the requests that we've received from a guideline group. Just to kind of illuminate a bit on this process. So they sent us a list of titles and the record numbers that they had identified on KSR Evidence. And then they said, well, we would like to have these critically appraised. They haven't been appraised yet on the database. They are on your database, but they're not assessed. And then we said, yeah, sure, give us a couple of days to find the papers, and then we will critically appraise them. And again, I think it's useful to highlight this because I think we all know and understand that undertaking a critical appraisal is quite time consuming and therefore quite costly. So, to offer critical appraisal at £25 per fast track, it's much cheaper really than the true cost of an appraisal. And for the guideline developers, it's great because obviously they can offload that work onto us and they get some nice critical appraisals in return. So yeah, it's I just wanted to highlight that, and in addition to Robert's answer that he gave there. We just have one question left, and this is for Lisa. Just again, please do ask us any questions you might have. Of course, we do remain available after the webinar. You can always send us an email if anything comes to mind. So Lisa, final question for you. You mentioned you include health technology assessment reports that you search Enata, but how do you find these health technology assessment reports?
As anyone who's ever tried to find a health technology assessment report, it's not easy. So some will be picked up by the database searches. So any HTA that's published as a journal article, we will find just through the searches of the main journals databases we search. The problem with health technology assessments is that a lot of them are what you might call grey literature. So they're not officially published, they're just perhaps on the organization's website. They can be really, really tricky to track down. I actually have experience of working on the HTA database when it was published by CRD, which then transferred across to the international HTA database, which is now produced by Enata. So I've got quite a lengthy experience of trying to track down HTA reports. So we do search the Enata database because that is a good repository of HTA reports, but unfortunately it doesn't contain them all. So what we also do, and Will's involved in this process and she knows how tricky it is we look direct on HTA organisations' websites. They're not always easy to search. Will's laughing now because she's experienced in some of the issues involved. They're not always easy to search. They're not always indexed. They're not always well listed. They're quite hard to export data from. So we do what we can. It's not easy, and that's why we say we aim to include all HTA reports. It's not easy to find them, and it's hard to kind of know what you don't know. We can't be nearly as confident with them as we can with systematic reviews, but we do go to extreme lengths. We search many, many HTA organisation websites, as I say, as well as the Enata database and anything that might appear on journal websites as well.
Again, just to add to that answer, again, you could see that could potentially save you some time, because we really go through some headache. And in addition to the points that Lisa made already, my observation is also that these HTA websites seem to change their layout every 2 minutes or so, and every time you log in again, you almost wonder if you have used the right link, because it looks completely different, and then you have to remind yourself to how to search it, and obviously that's why it's useful to have humans involved in that process, because obviously every time you write a script to harvest that for you, the script would fail, because every time the website is changed, then that script wouldn't work anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, just my 2 pence on that matter.
Yeah, and I'm afraid I didn't give Robert due credit either, because he does actually look on the German language HTA websites, and we also have somebody who looks on the Spanish language website. So again, another problem is the fact that naturally these are published in the country's language of origin. So again, it can be really, really difficult to find if you haven't got the language skills. So yeah, thank you, Robert.
And also to add that, yes, I am involved in searching for these, but we do include a list of the organizations that we search on the About Us section. And that also includes a list of the other resources that we search that Lisa's already mentioned that. But so for anyone who's interested to see which organizations we search, then yeah, they are on the website. They are available to look through and to see what we include. So that was it for all the questions that have been asked so far. So I think we will just end it there. Thank you to everyone who has joined us for today's webinar. I hope you found it useful. Robert and Lisa, thank you for sharing your insight and your expertise. As a reminder, you will all receive a 1-week free access code to KSR Evidence after the webinar has ended. If you have any additional questions or would like to connect directly with the KSR Evidence team, you can either contact us using the contact information on the slide here, or you can reach out to us either by emailing, or we're on X or on LinkedIn. You can call us. So we would really appreciate to hear from you. And again, do make use of that free trial. You will receive this in an email together with a link to the recording of today's session as well, if you want to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. So finally, just to say, we would really appreciate it if you could take a minute to fill out the post-webinar survey, which will appear once you exit this webinar. But yeah, with all that being said, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you and goodbye.